live. It's simple. I point to you, we be live. I point.
The phone.
Look for my finger.
Is the phone live?
The phone.
My phone's right there.
Yeah.
It's live?
Share the broadcast.
Are we live?
Check
us here.
Look for my
Share
finger.
this video. This video right here. So you can share it.
Here we go.
That's how you can share. Good evening, everybody. Thank you and welcome to Dana Being Dana on intellectualradio.com and iHeart Radio Station. Thank you all so much for joining us. This is our second show. And before I do anything else, I want to just thank everybody for tuning in to our first show last week. We had a great time. We had a great turnout. And I just want to thank everybody, each and every person out there who shared the show on Facebook Live. I know people are sharing now, so thank you. I can't always see who's sharing, but I just want to thank you so much for sharing, for liking. I just appreciate you all helping to get the word out that Dana Being Dana is here and that you appreciate what we're doing, and I'm very excited about all that is to come. So just thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for all of my guests who were here last week. We had a good time. And so I just want to just say thank you to everybody for all of that. Before I introduce my esteemed guests, I want to just take a minute to just acknowledge the people who are down in Houston. Hurricane Harvey hit pretty hard. And I just want to take a moment just to acknowledge people down there who are suffering, who are without power, who have lost a lot of things. Good friends of mine have lost everything. And I just appreciate the people who still are watching. There's some people down there who are watching now, so just thank you so much, and just letting you know that we are praying for you. We are thinking about you. If you are interested in supporting efforts for Hurricane Harvey relief, please contact me. I know that local Red Crosses have different initiatives going on, but there's several different ways to give back and to help out. And that's one of the things that's very important to me is showing up, showing compassion, stepping outside of yourself and being there to support and help others. So I'm just thinking about you all, especially my girl who I talked to today, who prayed for me and my show in the midst of everything that was going on down there in Houston. So thank you. We are praying for you. We are here with you. And that just goes to my next point. And I'm stalling a little bit because we're waiting on one of our guests. But one of the things that I wanted to address before we get into tonight's topic, which is about divorce and moving on, is just that there are people out there who are going through stuff. It's not just Hurricane Harvey and what else is going on, but I have been touched, and I said this before last week, I've been touched with how this message has been received by people. And to be able to talk about my story last week and then to talk about and give a preview about discussing divorce and moving on, there's a lot of people out there hurting. There's a lot of people going through stuff, and you never know what other people are going through. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that, and I'm just hopeful that what we say tonight, what we do in this series, Dana Being Dana, is helpful to people. That's why I do this. That's the purpose of what I do. That's what drives me to do this. When I first did my show on the Gift of Gab show with Gabby Smith, who was here last week, really good friend of mine, when I did that show, I was touched. There was a friend of mine who reached out to me in tears, and what she was saying was that she said, I wish my girlfriend had heard you in time. She's no longer living, and it was because of her divorce that she never really recovered from. And that's something that's always inspired me, and it's one of the reasons why this first show is dedicated to my girl and her friend. If we can help people tonight, that's what makes all of this worth it. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that. So many people have shared both the original podcast with Gabby and also the show last week to people who are going through things. So this is for you. We are here, and we just hope that what we have to say is just helpful to people. And that's just something, helping others, showing up for others, having compassion for people is just something that's really on my heart and my spirit in light of current events and just some of the feedback that I've gotten from the show. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my guests who I've got here now in studio. First, Ernest, he is a friend of mine, and we'll do the other stuff in a second. But do you want to just say a couple words?
Oh, hi. My name is Ernest, and thank you, Dana, for having me on the show tonight. I agree with you that we should be sharing from ourselves in order to tell our stories to help people, because every day we run into people who are going through various things that we've already been through.
Right.
And it never ceases to amaze me the amount of times that something that I didn't even hardly remember going through, somebody comes up to me and talks about something that's happening to them right now, and it's like, wow, I remember something like that happened, and I'm able to pull from that well. So I thank God for all of the experiences that we go through, even the ones that are difficult to talk about, like divorce, for example, that we're going to talk about tonight. But we know that in the end, we help ourselves, and we also help others when we open up.
This is
So
true.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. There is purpose in your pain. We talked about that last week. Everything that you go through means something. And if you can learn the lesson, if you can find the healing, it makes it worth it. So next to Ernest is the beautiful and lovely Miss Wanda B. How are you, Wanda, this evening?
I'm well. Thank you for having me, Dana.
Of course. Thank you for joining us. As you guys all know, Wanda was here last week, and she is the host. The host is with the mostest of He Said, She Said, which is also part of the intellectualradio.com family. When is your show, Wanda?
Sundays at 2 p.m.
Sundays at 2 p.m. And it is always a show that you do not want to miss. So I wanted to I wanted to address one topic, and then we'll take a quick break. Last week, I got feedback on the last show, and you guys were there for the show. There was feedback from the last show about glorifying divorce. Some of the feedback that I got was that it was glorifying divorce, and that was one thing that I wanted to address. And I'll tell you my thoughts, and you guys can chime in before we take a quick break. But my thoughts when it comes to divorce, because I am a survivor of divorce, but for me, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving. And I truly believe, and I strongly believe, that if you have done all of your best, right? I believe in the Bible. I believe that your marriage is something that is ordained by God. But if it doesn't work out, if you've given it all you've tried your hardest, you've done all that you can do, I think that it takes two to be in a marriage. And if you've decided that is no longer your option, that is no longer for you, and it's over, it's about that healing. And I think you come to a fork in the road. You come to a crossroads where one path is acknowledgement that this relationship is over. All relationships fail but one. And if you believe that, then you just have the understanding that this relationship isn't it. There's more for me out there. There's better for me out there. And that's what I'm going to be focused on. The other alternative is when people get into more self-destructive behaviors. People turn to depression, drugs, alcohol, promiscuity, other factors because they are reeling from their divorce. So I just wanted you guys to weigh in on that before we take a quick break.
Weighing in on turning into... So, I guess I have had this experience. More so, I've been divorced, as well as my mother. Watching my parents divorce, I decided to handle mine differently because my mother was one of those who didn't heal from the divorce. And she could talk about it. If you talk to her today, you'd act like it happened yesterday. I said, how long your mother been divorced? And that was like 26 years.
Exactly.
But so I don't know so it really does take time. It's almost like mourning the loss, mourning the loss of what you had. And that time is different for everybody. I think sometimes we can't judge how we should heal the length of time, but we do have to work on healing.
Right.
We have to work on becoming whole again. I think a lot of times for my mother, her life was her family and her marriage.
Right.
And she had never maintained a life outside of that. And so when it was over, she didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. So I hope through our conversation today, for the people who deal with that kind of thing and the not knowing what to do after the divorce, that there's options. There's hope. There's people who've gone through it and people on the other side and people in the midst of it. So, and we're all at different stages.
That's
I
right.
think talking to you today, you had an experience that I've never had before through the length of my divorce. So it's like, wow. I mean, everybody's experience is so
It's very
different. And so learning and taking pieces from that. So I hope through Dana being Dana tonight, 9 o'clock at intellectualradio.com, we help some people. I'm really looking forward to that as well. I heard you mention that, and I am looking forward to that. And from the male perspective too, I never hear. I know how
What the brothers are doing.
How the brothers are thinking through the process. I know how my girlfriends feel, but I'm always so interested in hearing how a man handles divorce, because I don't think I've ever talked to a man about that.
Do men shoot?
Shoot.
Are they waiting to exhale?
Yes, do they wait to exhale?
There's lots of men waiting to exhale. I think in terms of covering the topic, and then I'll answer that. Answering your first question, which is, I look at this show, and the reason that it birthed in our hearts to do this is not to glorify divorce, but it is to deal with the reality that there is divorce and that people are divorced, and many people are. And so, what do we do now? That's the point. How do you move forward?
For the people who are there, of course, I don't think anybody goes into marriage hoping to divorce.
Hoping to get divorced. That's
Nobody wants that.
That's
no
true.
one wants
Yeah.
that when they get married. They want it to be happy ever after.
Right.
So we're not, of course, none of us are glorifying divorce because we all didn't set out to be
That
here.
was not the
It was not
intention.
the goal.
Right.
Exactly. And answer your question about men shoot. If I understand it correctly, yeah. I think everybody hopes for that happily ever after.
Right.
And when it doesn't work out, there's often, when you get out of a marriage, I'll talk about this a little later, there's this sense of, I'm going to get out of this and find the right thing for me. But then the reality sets in that it's not as simple as
Right.
that. And so we definitely do long for, as much as we don't like to talk about it, the romantic
Really?
connection. Yeah, I think a lot of men do.
Oh, absolutely.
It isn't always the thing that we chase visibly.
Right.
But it's certainly in our hearts. I think for the most part, any man will tell you they want a place, just like a woman, where they are at peace, a safe place to be,
Amen.
and a place to rest their head. I think that's what all of us like, to find somebody that has our back, male or female. I think that's a common thing. I think it's just the expression of it and the way in which we might view it and go about it might be a little different.
That's exactly right. So we're going to take a quick break. This is Dana being Dana on intellectualradio.com, and we'll be right back. Thank you.
There you go.
We're still on Facebook Live.
Good job, Jack. Good job. Don't let me out. Dana.
You can share it. I know.
Good
You're
job.
going to keep me straight. You got me straight.
Good job. You gonna bring your guest again?
Come on, Ron.
The back.
We're waiting on
Good
Ron.
job, y'all. Very good job.
Everybody.
You know what? I'm going to grab my phone. Ask people to send in any questions or anything. We'll look at it on the line.
Can you monitor that?
Yeah, I will.
All right. If you have questions, well, we can tell people. If you have questions on Facebook Live, you can let us know, and we'll answer those too while we're on the show. Where did he go? He's real sensitive. He's so sensitive.
Where's Ron? He's coming.
Is this coming? Put that on there?
Yes. Yes.
Come on, Ron.
You want to read your comments real quick?
Hey, everybody. Where is Ron? Thank you, Miss Annie. Hey, everybody. What's up, fam? Thank you, Houston. I see you.
You good right there. You good right there.
You good?
Yeah, you good. Yeah. All right.
All right, we're going to start with you. We're going to go through the stats.
Are you going to ask the question? What's the question you're going to ask?
We're going to go through the stats. The divorce facts. Y'all want to just do them like sequentially?
That's how I do it.
Like,
Whatever's first.
We're
What's
on
the
live.
question
Let's
you're going to
go.
ask?
Just flow.
How did you meet your spouse? And we on live right now, so don't say nothing. Don't say
Let's
nothing
go back
crazy.
to the. Let's go back to the show.
You ready?
5, 4, 3, 2.
We are back. Thank you. Dana being Dana is back on intellectualradio.com, an iHeartRadio station. We are joined now by Ron Baker Jr., the most hilarious comedian you'll ever meet. Hey, Ron.
Thank you so much, Dana.
How you doing?
Hey,
Welcome.
Dana, welcome. Thank you for having me.
So we are talking
Is this
about...
like PBS radio? So,
Yes, you gotta get really
sweaty
intellectual.
balls. Thank you. Thank you.
We're talking
Sweaty
divorce, not
balls.
We're
sweaty.
talking about divorce.
Right, thank you.
So this
He got the reference. I
This is
appreciate
what I want to
that.
do.
Yum.
So
Yes.
everybody on my panel is funny and cool, and we are all divorced.
Tell me
So
about
what I'd
that.
like to do is we're gonna go down. We're just gonna go through the stats, just so you know, just some of the basic stats about our marriage and divorces. So I'll start with you, Ron, and we'll come back down to me each time. You ready?
Okay, what's question
Boom, here
number
we
one?
go. The first question is, how did you meet your spouse?
I met her at church.
Church.
Yes, I did.
Amen.
Interesting story. I was a drummer, and I was
Musicians.
a musician. Right? You know what to say about
You know what
drummers?
they say about
So I was at a
musicians?
guest church, and I actually was seeing somebody in the choir. When I saw her, all I could see was her. So I had somebody else go and make up an excuse that I could not. We were going to dinner or something like that. And I was like, just tell her I can't go. So she was a friend of mine, and I asked my friend, I said, who is that girl? And she was dressed really nice. Right. Who's that lady? You got me on
Okay.
the same-
Okay, finish the story.
So and from that point on, I was just so interested in who this woman was. So I met her at church ultimately.
All
I
right.
love stories. I don't
Well,
care
we
how
got
it
plenty of
ends.
love stories on Dana and Dana. Wanda?
There's twists and turns in there, though.
Oh, we're gonna get to that. How did you meet your spouse, Wanda?
DeCola's. I wish it was
The
a big
restaurant?
fancy story. He was standing on one side of the fish market.
Oh, the fish market.
Yes,
On
DeCola's.
Western.
Yes, on Western. He was standing on one side and then we met. So the rest is history.
Ernest?
She was the lady that Ron stood up in the choir.
Well, there you have it.
She wasn't.
That's
no,
hilarious.
we actually met.
That was you, wasn't
Yeah, it was me.
Don't fight, guys.
It's okay. It's okay. No, we met at a Christmas event, actually related to my church. A friend of mine at church had organized the event, and he invited my ex-wife along with her. She was one of his best friends from high school, and we were at the same table, and we started dating from there. And about a year later, we got married.
A year later, you got married. Well, just to close the loop, I met my ex-husband through college friends, and we dated for 3 years before we got married. Wanda, how about you? How long did you date your ex-spouse before you got engaged
Normal
or
year,
married?
got engaged, and was engaged a year. So 2 years total.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ron?
and you know what? 11 months. I only knew her 11 months and I got married to her.
Yeah, mine was literally a week or so shy of knowing her a year when we got married.
Wow. And everybody's been
A
married
week.
A week shy of
a
a year.
year.
Oh, okay.
So 11 months.
51
and 3
weeks.
I do not submit to just getting married and knowing somebody 11 months. I think it takes a little bit longer to get to know someone, but I was much younger then. As you get older, you can tell who someone, it doesn't take as much time
It
to
does
know
not
who someone
take-
is.
Common said it does not take all day.
It does not talk.
Recognize.
In 2 minutes, I can sum up who you are and what you are.
I think it
And
works.
does it fit me?
Right. I think it works when it works, but it's always safer, in my opinion, to take more time.
Take more time.
If you're gonna be together forever anyway,
What's the rush?
That's right. 11 months versus forever.
Yeah.
Oh, if I'd have just took more time. Touch
Sounds
your
like
neighbor
a
and
song.
What
say,
is
take.
more time?
touch your
though?
neighbor and say,
What
take more
length of
time.
time is enough? What length of
Well,
time? do you think?
there's a reason why I moved so quickly.
She's pregnant.
Oh, well,
That was the rumor.
I mean,
Because
that's how it works, right?
She was a
You know?
27-year-old virgin and got pregnant that night.
oh boy.
Wow.
And that was the rumor. As the Bible says, she knew not a man. That meant she was a virgin. When they said she
Yeah.
did not know, she knew not a man. But she got pregnant immediately, which was, don't ever say it can't happen the first time.
Immediate.
Immediately, she conceived.
And
And everybody's been married once, right? Anybody been married
I married the
twice?
same woman twice.
Right.
Okay.
Another
So
show.
you got a whole nother show.
Yes,
over here,
another
Ron.
show.
So, in total, Ron, out of both of your marriages,
Right.
To the same person?
How
To
long
the
were you
same
married?
person. Both my kids. I have 2 kids by the same baby mama through 2 marriages.
I like that story.
Steve Harvey got nothing on me.
he got a lot of gifts.
A lot of gifts.
Steve Harvey got nothing.
Nothing.
All right, next question. How long were you married and how many kids? Ron, you've already answered that question.
So I was married 15 minutes the first time.
And that's all you need to get pregnant.
That's why you got married
Listen,
again.
That's all you need to
all I need is 2 of those 15. Want to see?
Right.
Want to see?
Exactly.
So, how long were you married? You said 15 years?
15 minutes.
Okay.
So, and my equation for that is each month is like a minute. So it was 15 months actually. 15 months.
And you're both of your marriages? What are you talking
No,
about?
no. The first marriage was 15 months.
Total.
Oh, total.
Add up your marriages.
Total.
That's how many it was.
You must want to
20
live the
years.
marriage.
You need to calculate it. 20 years. Okay, 15 months.
You do kind of because it was 7 divorced.
Oh, okay.
Then
Wanda.
another 7 on.
How
You
long?
had too much
Wanda,
bad
how long were you
problems.
married and how many kids?
4 children. I had a child when we got married. 4 children and married 20 years.
20 years. Ernest?
We made it to almost 7, no children.
I was married for 7 years, 2 kids. How long were you separated? And how long has it been since your divorce? I'll start. I've been separated for a year. I was separated for a year, and I've been divorced now for 2 years.
Total is 5. I don't remember the exact separation time, close to a year, and then the rest has been divorced. For 5 years total.
Want to be?
I was separated. Out that 23 were separated years, and I've only been divorced 8 months.
I was,
Don't choke on it now, Ron.
I was hoeing for 2 years.
During, afterwards.
During
Right.
the marriage,
That ain't no real hoeing. Just 2 years.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Oh, longer than that.
Wow. That was a
You had no
neophyte.
real
That was a
How did Dave Chappelle
neophyte. You
say?
ain't no vintage hoe.
How did Dave Chappelle say? Amateurs.
Amateur. But wow, I thought I was really doing something.
Nah,
you know.
that's-
So you thought.
But I was separated the first time for at least 3 years, at least, before it actually became
Yeah,
final.
of course.
Because, you know, you can't be a little bit pregnant and you can't be a little bit married. Either you're married
Either you married
or
or
you're not.
Mhm.
That's true.
It's
I
one or
agree.
the other. And then on the second time, ooh, this sounds like a lot, I was separated for about 4 years.
Come on now. Come on, Sway. Separated for 4 years.
It was a process, and then something happened in between. It's a story.
Okay. Okay.
It's deeper than it seems.
It sounds like another show.
sounds deep.
Yes,
I
I'm
wanna-
an iceberg.
We get the tip.
I want to
Yes.
jump to one of my favorite questions, and we'll go back to some of this other stuff because we'll get to some of the other topics in a minute. But I like this question, and this is the question about what you looked for in a mate before you got married versus what you look for in a mate now.
Are we starting?
I'll
out here?
start.
Does anybody want to start?
I will start. What I looked for in a mate 20-something odd years ago is way different than what I look for in a mate now.
It is.
Because at that time I had goals. I was one of those building, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew how I wanted to do it. I was driven and I was looking for someone driven, credit score, doing this. I want a house. I want this. I want this. I want that.
A woman that wants things. That's so unusual.
I'm not that person anymore, though. But at that time, I was very, and what I realize now is what I didn't look for is someone who was right for me. I looked for someone who could,
Who you thought was right?
who could give me the things I thought I needed and wanted to get to the goal of my life, and not necessarily who could touch my heart and be there for me. And so now that's all changed. I feel like I'm ready built. When people say, "Oh, you're gonna meet somebody to build with," I'm done building. So I want ready built.
Are you an add water and stir type of woman right now?
Add water and stir.
Yes, my brother.
I'm
and I,
already stirred.
You already stirred. My brother and I used to
settled.
talk about we wanted to add water. We didn't want to have to teach anyone anything. We wanted to just add some hot water and stir it.
Just started already.
Yeah,
I've
the
already
instant.
been stirred.
Instant.
So are you instant,
I'm instant.
or you already warmed up?
I've been heated up, warmed, and sitting
So all we gotta
waiting
do
to
is
be.
pull you out the refrigerator.
I'm already
Shake-
heated
shake
up.
her a little
so
bit.
Shake her a
little bit.
It pulled me out the microwave.
Oh, wow.
I'm done, ready.
She's good to go.
I'm good to go.
Wow.
A lot of healing process, but I'm looking for something different now than I was. It was more like checking off a checklist
Yes.
of what I wanted at
Right.
that time, and my checklist is so different. I don't
Right.
even have one now. So.
Yeah, I don't have a checklist now, and what I learned though through what went on in my marriage, because what I was looking for then is a lot like what I would looking for now is a person who is about their business, but also a nice person, a person that really gets along well with people and put them in different situations. That I realize how much more important that is now than I did before. So it wasn't anything that I missed except for the compatibility. Because I didn't have a list, and I really don't have one now. But what I missed was, and I say this to people all the time, you got to pay attention, you have to take it seriously, how you feel about yourself when you deal with that particular person. It's not, I'm not talking about how they treat you, because that's a separate and important analysis in and of itself. But there's just something about the way it's almost out of our control. How do you feel about yourself? What type are you able to be who you want to be? And sometimes
Does it feel good?
Does it feel good? Does it feel right? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel free? Do you feel at peace? And a lot of people don't feel at peace. They don't feel comfortable. And like I did, and like others have done, they chalk it up to their insecurities. Well, I just have to get over that. I have to learn how to
That's
deal
very
with that.
true.
Very
And
true.
I'm insecure because she's, this or that, or I just have to work on that. And at a certain point, and certainly at my age now, but even then I wasn't that young when I got married either, I am who I am. And I interact with situations the way that I interact with them. Yes, I can grow and change, but this isn't the situation where you want to test out your ability to grow.
Yeah.
You want to know what you're getting into. You want to know how you respond and react to different things.
Mm-hmm.
And when certain situations hit us, I saw in myself, wow.
That's right, when that pressure get on you.
Yeah, I froze up at times. I closed in. I got bitter. She reacted the way she did. That wasn't productive. And so we have to pay attention to that. And I didn't.
Right.
And in hindsight, I'm not, I don't know whether we got married or not. We certainly would have taken more time. And then maybe not.
I believe there are combustible personalities. I believe bleach is a good product.
Mm-hmm.
I believe hydrate.
You don't put that in a drink. What is going on here?
Well, it's a good chemical.
He's
It's a good-
talking
it's
about the way
necessary.
people mix together.
Oh.
Together.
Right, but even with drinks, some drinks don't mix.
Okay.
If you drink one thing and drink something else, some things are good separately, but together they're combustible.
Okay.
Right.
So
They can be good on their own.
They can be good on their own.
But it can
Bleach
be
is really
volatile.
good, but it can be volatile. So if you take organic apple cider vinegar, it's good by itself. And if you take baking soda,
You got
that's good
third
by
grade
itself.
volcanoes.
But if you mix them together, it erupts. And some things are good separately, but not good together. And it's good to know who you are. Like you said, you deal with things the way that you deal with them. I know, what type of temperament that I have. I know now, especially, I know me a little bit better. But when you get with someone that doesn't balance you out, it can be an eruption.
I think it's important to be with
That's
somebody.
being the street clowning.
It's important to be with somebody who makes you better. And what you said about how you feel about that person. I know my checklist when I was younger, before I got married, is very different than it was then. Before I got married, I knew I wanted to have children. I knew I wanted a certain level of security, and I knew that I wanted to be a certain way in my marriage.
So what is that certain way?
I would say the certain way is similar.
Because if you say certain, he may not know what that certain is.
Well, there's a lot of things that you learn, particularly when you have children in a marriage. And I've said this before, you never know what type of parent you are until you become one.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks that, parenting can be very idealistic. It's the Facebook photos and Merry Christmas and all this other stuff. But it's nothing like that. It's a very selfless act. I think it's one of the most selfless acts and things you can do. I will say this over and over again, how unsexy parenting can be.
Listen, wiping snot and cleaning booties.
Wiping snot and cleaning booties. That's exactly what we did. But I think partnership and compatibility is very important. I think when you have an ambitious lifestyle, when there's a lot of things you want out of life, you want a partner who is with you in that. And that may not be for everybody. Some people want somebody who's in the background. Some people want somebody who's beside them. And some people want to pedal behind other people. I just want to, put my fork in you and just ride on your coattails, right? People want different things when it comes to getting married. Some people want a trophy. Some people want a sugar mama.
That is true.
Or a sugar daddy,
That is true.
right? Some people don't want to work for themselves. They just want to use you and ride on what you've got. That's what I was talking about.
Is that what Stedman does?
I don't think so.
Talk about
But how does Oprah feel? Does he support Oprah?
Well, first of all, Oprah's not married.
Does he show
Right.
what?
Oprah's
They're not married.
Right.
But they've lasted longer than a lot of married
A
couples.
lot of marriages. They lasted longer than my
Obviously,
marriage.
in my act, I say there's some shackers that have outlasted married folks.
Yes. Yes.
And happy.
Happy.
I wonder why that is.
Loving
That's
it.
another
And I
topic.
believe if they got married, somehow they become unhappy.
Sometimes I do think when you push
But
the
I've
envelope.
seen shackers at church. Come on, we all go to churches, but we know they've been
Churches
shacking for
you go
years. And they're happy. Go to church together. And then there's people who are married. My grandmother, who was married until my granddaddy died, he never went to church with her. Many people thought my grandmother was single. He never went to church. Took care of his family. He provided, paid for that house, paid for those cars, took care of those children, but never went to church. But she felt a little alone or lonely at times because she wanted her husband. All the other women had their husbands
Yes.
at church with her, and she was prominent in the church, but her husband was vacant. Never did come.
But at home, were they able to be? Did they have that right bond at home, as far as you know? I mean, I know you don't.
That's a very good question. That's what I knew. That's what I saw. They were the way they were. You know, after all those years, we still together.
Yeah.
They made it work the way they made it work. And my grandmother did what the Bible says. She honored him until he died. And she began to share things with me that my grandfather had done throughout their marriage, which I could not believe. Some things were unbelievable. I just couldn't believe some. It's not my granddaddy the way he is now. But she never let that get in the way of serving him and literally serving him. When I say serve, putting that food at his spot at the table, that's Willie's seat. Nobody sat in that seat. Honoring him as the head of who she was. And I believe that God blessed her for honoring him, even though he did some despicable things back in the day. But she did what the Bible says, and she's blessed because of it. And I don't know if they make Josephine Bakers anymore that serve you and literally will do whatever they need to do to make sure that you are comfortable. Because we live in the day now where women, they're not going to take very much at all. And only take just a little bit, and I'm not going to deal with this. And then they have that girl in the ear saying, girl, you don't have to do. She who has no man tells her, who does have a man, you don't have to deal with that. You don't have to deal with that. Now both of y'all single, fighting on your own to get through. Anyway, that's
and I think, because I think the male-female dynamics have changed a lot. You talked about Willie's wife. Willie was providing for her.
Yes, he
and that's
was.
a whole other topic and a whole another show.
If you take care of them, you can get away with a few things.
Well.
She'll let a few things slide. If you paying this mortgage and these bills, all right, I'm gonna let that one go.
Well, I want to move to another topic. I want to talk about resentment, because I think, and this is some of the stuff that I talked about and touched on last week about moving forward, finding the purpose in your pain and moving on. Many people deal with significant resentment after they have gone through a divorce. And I want to just talk about some of the ways in which you have dealt with moving on from your divorce. I'm not saying that anybody here is resentful or bitter or anything of that nature. But
I am terribly resentful and bitter.
We know.
You
But
I thought I was hiding it.
no. Transparent and as all get out.
Are you serious?
For real.
No.
Like see-through. Mesh.
No.
Mesh. But I want to talk about, a couple things.
I'm sitting here like Grace Jones.
Is she mesh?
Yes, but you can see me.
Marcus.
That was Eartha Kitt. That was Eartha Kitt, not Grace Jones.
We get it.
Oh, that's right. You're right. That's the wrong one. I can't say that on the radio. So anyway, resentment.
Grace Jones was the other one.
Resentment. How do you deal with
What you
resentment
never do.
from moving on?
Resentment. I think one of the ways that I dealt with my resentment, which I did have a lot of bitterness in the marriage, which is what ultimately, in my opinion, led to my it contributed greatly to my decision.
Okay.
And then as I got out of the marriage, perspective helped. because I had to face the reality that a lot of things that I was angry and resentful about was really the anger I was at myself. Because of some of it went back to family issues and things that I felt that I had been taken advantage of or what have you, and it spilled over. And I realized that in the marriage and outside, a lot of what I went through, it was choices that I made and decisions that I made not to stand up for certain things that I wanted or go after things that I wanted. So a lot of that resentment, I realized a lot of it was on me. And with that perspective, I was able to unpack a lot of that. It's through therapy at times, but mostly just through self-reflection. And my ex and I had a couple of really good conversations while we were going through the divorce process after, where we both were able to sit down and we owned a lot of what we both contributed.
Was that your exit interview?
Yeah, I guess so. A few conversations, nothing planned, but they happened as we interacted. And, so I think that perspective helped. I was able to see her as not the villain that I had started making her out to be during the marriage and maybe even the beginning of the divorce process, but to understand that this was a person who reacted the way she reacted and I reacted the way I reacted, and we both contributed to the good and the bad and everything in between.
How long did that take?
I think it took about 1.5 years. Now, that doesn't mean that I got over it all. I'm not saying that. But to have those conversations when we were interacting, I give her credit because one of them she opened up, another one I initiated, and our families were close, and so we still had some interaction, which was good, even though we didn't have kids. So that helped us to have moments to talk. We never doubled back in terms of dating again, but we certainly had chances to talk. So I was thankful for that, and it helped me to realize that, we weren't compatible, but she wasn't the evil, person that there were days I felt that way in the marriage because reactions and interactions hit my nerves or hit my sensitive spots in different ways, and she was evil incarnate. You couldn't tell me otherwise.
Cruella de Vil.
Nothing.
And with perspective, I was able to look back and see, well, yeah, you acted like this, and so she acted like that. Her reaction wasn't that great, but your action might have contributed, and then vice versa. She did this, and well, yeah, I know I acted like that, but you did this, and so there was an ability without having to go through long, drawn-out conversations about who did what, where we were able to just own parts, and by owning some of my stuff, she owned some of her stuff, we were able to kind of, move past it. I can't say we became best friends or anything, but we actually were able to talk.
But you realize for every action there was a reaction.
What else? What about, how do you get past your divorce, any type of resentment, and move forward?
You mentioned therapy.
I think therapy's great, and I think a lot of people underestimate the power of therapy.
Black folk don't use therapy. You better pray about it and drink some water.
Pray about it.
Pray about it.
What's the water?
Lay down. Just drink. I don't know.
Just drink some water.
Drink some
It'll
water.
help. You'll be hydrated.
You'll be right. Pray about it. Read your Bible. See what the Lord
But I
says.
do think that it's important to have therapy if you need it. I think that you cannot get past some of your issues, and we all have issues. I think life is about figuring out whose issues you really want to deal with and really want to put up with. But I think it takes two to tango, and I think people contribute to the demise of a relationship. If you can't be real with yourself, if you are deflecting, if you are blaming, you're going to carry those traits into your next relationship.
Well, women are never going to accept the blame.
That's not
Oh,
true.
that's not true.
That's
Men,
My point
I
exactly.
think so.
No,
I rest my case.
I refuse to accept
Just that
my
quick.
blame. You don't want
Just
us
that
to
quick.
accept the blame of the blame of the blame.
No,
That
it
doesn't
takes-
make
I
sense.
rest my case.
it takes two to tango, but I think
The good answer would have been like, you're right. Sometimes we don't.
You said all. If you would have said
Not all.
some,
I mean,
all.
just-
Had
not
it
all.
broken down and said,
Well, I
you
say
said
women. I did say
So
women.
you made it so general.
I'm making a
that
general
we had
statement,
to. But if
but
you
some
said
women.
some, well, I'll go
But
with
yet
some.
you all approved my point.
No, we didn't.
I think he
Anyway.
was making a nice joke. So.
and a ha
You see how fired up they got just
And
that
a
quick?
kiki.
But
But I think one of the first steps. One is you gonna say something?
mentioning the resentment, and sometimes I think it depends on who initiates the divorce too,
That's
who
true.
has the end of the resentment, and where the blame is put to sometimes on it. But agreeing with both of you, therapy and really realizing that for me it was totally focusing on me and what I brought to the relationship, what I got out of it, and really analyzing, well, you wanted this, and what part did you bring into it? Because I couldn't change him. I can't make him do anything different, or I couldn't go back over anything he said or did. So what did I bring to this relationship?
Mhm.
What do I fix or heal so next time I don't have the same result? If I want a different outcome, I need to put something in it. And it does take some reflection to say, well, you wanted this from him, but did you go about it the way to get that from him? So how do I get that from the next person I want to be with? So to take some time to really analyze what you brought into the relationship and how you communicate. Because sometimes I believe I created very bad patterns over the 20 years of how to try to get the love I wanted, what I thought was working, and it was all his fault for not understanding because I know him. so
Can you say that one more time?
I told you not to understand because I did tell you need to stop doing that.
If you see the chicken neck and the finger that is
You
going
always
with
got to do
it.
the chicken neck and the finger.
Yes, and
So
that twang.
and go back and say, where did that start? Where did that happen? How did I learn to love? How did I learn? And it takes time.
One thing I've seen from people, and it's amazing that once you get divorced or go through the process, you meet so many other people who are divorced or who are going through the process. But I think one thing that's really important, first and foremost, is to make sure you're done with the relationship. Because I know people who start the process or are going through the process or who are even divorced, but they're not really over the divorce. You've been married twice to the same person.
Yeah.
I think it's important to make sure that, you know, when you are done, you're done, and that there's some finality to it, because that only helps you with your healing. You don't want to be 17 years after your divorce is final, you know, still peddling the same person, still running behind the same person, because there's no growth in that. There's no real next chapter for that. We talked about therapy. I think another thing is forgiveness. Being able to forgive yourself, being able to forgive any players that were either internal or external to your marriage and its demise. Releasing the hurt, releasing the anger, releasing the pain is very liberating, not only for yourself but for, you know, the people involved. But it helps you to move forward. You release all of that hold over you, and I think forgiveness is so incredibly important. I think one of the hardest things to do is to give forgiveness to people who haven't asked for. But being willing to forgive and move on, because I think that really helps the healing process.
I totally agree that forgiving yourself, forgiving failing. I felt really about failing,
Mm-hmm.
that not marrying. I thought I had married the person I was going to be with the rest of my life, and the somewhat shame a little bit I felt of that shame. And so forgiving yourself for that, and I think I'm still in the process of continuously forgiving myself and telling myself that's a process as well.
Yeah, I think forgiving yourself is critical, and I've struggled mightily with that, and still do. The shame, as Wanda said, is a big part of the forgiveness. It ties together. The shame, it drove me to isolation. I was fortunate that I got a job opportunity in another city, actually out of the country, but it was close by in Canada, right around the time I got separated. So I was able to go and remove myself and still have the interaction we needed to have, but I was away, and I was able to just kind of run out and just do my thing. And it was fun, but it was also, one of my friends pointed out, I was just running from everything. I didn't want to deal emotionally. And that shame, and I isolated, I pulled away. Even though I was interacting with people, other than a few friends, I didn't talk to anyone about my marriage or the divorce. And a lot of people didn't ask either, because they didn't know what to say.
Right.
And so it was easy to isolate, but then that isolation caught up with me. Within a year, 2 years, I just felt totally detached from my power source, from my family, friends, and others.
I think it is important. You said a couple things I want to touch on. I think it is important to live your life at a distance. I think sometimes people get caught up in the divorce but still want to pretend and act like they're still married. And I think that when it's over, you have to act and respond accordingly, right? That's not your last call. anymore at night, or whatever interactions, some of those
That's right.
rituals and things have to be over. And you have to, we can talk about co-parenting in a minute, but you have to react and respond in a way that is responsive to your situation. So I think, living, on some levels it's fortunate to be able to move away, but to live your life in a distance and respect and establish new boundaries that obviously weren't there before because you were married. So sometimes minimizing your interaction can be healthy in the healing process. But another thing you were talking about, which I think is important, is once you're certain you're done with a relationship, is to actually take the time to grieve. Death, it's the death of a marriage, of your dreams. Like you said, nobody really gets married thinking they're going to get divorced. So realizing that this is no longer what your plan is.
Yeah, I believe in the Greek, divorce is tearing of the flesh, ripping of the flesh, because two have become one.
Right.
So it's ripping of the flesh. So it is a painful.
It is a painful process.
Process, especially when you put all of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
all of yourself into it.
That's right, John Legend.
Come on, come on, all of me.
Loves But it's hard when it's over and it's done, right? You have to grieve, and I think you should take the time you need. I'm not saying burn clothes, like wait.
And time is time.
Time is time.
Time is time. You can't put a time stamp on it. Should take a year. Grief processes for people are differently.
Right, but I think
Because if you're seeing someone in a new relationship, they'll say, well, you should be over that by now. Well, according to you, I should be over it by now. But according to me, I may not be over it by
You
now.
either are or you aren't.
Right.
I mean, and I think we have to deal with where we are as a factual matter, and put aside what you should be and shouldn't be at your age, at your time of singleness, whatever. You are or you aren't ready for what you're ready for.
That's right.
And you have to, I think that's part of where the forgiveness of self and the therapy, self-awareness comes in. But I think it's accepting of ourselves. I had someone criticize me who I started dating, and I was in my early 40s when I got divorced, and they were like, well, you don't need to be out here, dating and doing this type of stuff. That's what the young man's game and blah, blah, blah. It was her agenda, right, to get what she wanted. And it got in my head for half a second, but it literally shook it off. I said, yeah, I'm where I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm where I am. I got divorced at 41 or whatever, 42. I'm where I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just owned it, and that's where I was.
other things that I've thought about when it comes to resentment and just moving forward, I think exercising. I've talked about that. Exercising and journaling. Shout out to my girl Maxine Waters. I think reclaiming your time is very important.
The Maxine?
The Maxine Waters.
Like, is your trainer name Maxine?
A trainer is not
You see right there? You blended it like
That was the point.
I got a white trainer. Her name is Maxine Waters.
But the point
working
is
this
about
off for me.
the point is about reclaiming your time, particularly if you are a parent and you've given so much of yourself to your marriage and your children and just others. I think getting
And
back
the lifestyle of marriage, the home, and
everything,
picking up and dropping off the kids, and
Everything.
church, and
right,
at night, and
all of that.
all of that.
And so to reclaim that, to get back to who you are and to live your life, that has been one of the most powerful and empowering things for me in my experience is reclaiming my time, honey, which has been good because I get to know myself again. One of the first things people said to me as I was going through my process is that Dana's back. I am back to being who I was. It took a lot out of me to go through my divorce.
It's a heck of a punch.
It's a heck of a punch, but my divorce and also my marriage and how I was treated in that, and it impacts what you're looking for in your future, what your expectations are, and the covering that you're looking for in your future relationships. And so I just think it's important.
You said the covering. That's a powerful word.
It is a powerful word.
Because people out there really want to understand when you say covering, what you
I
mean.
don't.
Covering? It's what Ernest was talking about before about.
Because it's a biblical term.
It is. It's about having someone having your back. It's a lot deeper than that, but it's just about.
It's a spiritual term.
Right. It's about somebody being there for you and having your back. I think that particularly when you get out of the phase where you're interested in having children, and I think people get married for several reasons, but I think primarily number one, people want to have children. The procreation, giving life, etc. And then it's the companionship, it's the partnership, and it's having somebody, you had talked about some of the ambitions and things that you have, having somebody support you in those, to be there for you in those, to, having somebody that helps you bring out your best you.
I look at it as if we take the biblical example of being one, then we should, as best we can, care for the other as if it was ourselves. And that feeling that you're with someone who cares for you as if it was them, that feeling or that sense of that is what I think about. And so when I think about the connection, I do think about that on both scores, me treating the person the way that I would want to be treated, and then her treating me the same.
Yeah, I know biblical term of covering is that the husband, from the biblical perspective, is the covering of the wife, regardless of his financial status, regardless of his whether he does anything or not. If he just sits around all day and does nothing, he is still the covering of that woman from a biblical perspective, which and covering means to protect. But even if he doesn't do anything, again, my grandfather did not go to church, didn't understand anything about the Bible, but she still acknowledged him as her covering and respected him as the head of the household and never tried to get around that. That's an argument that society doesn't want to give into, but even in gay relationships, they still operate under that same hierarchy when you see them, because somebody is the head and somebody is the tail. Because they really want a relationship that is traditional. But when we say traditional, basically we're saying biblical.
But I think there's a lot of relationships, both same-sex and heterosexual, where there is a lot more of a balanced equality. But I do agree that many relationships do still have one person maybe in the traditional sort of caretaker.
In a more masculine role.
And yeah, the traditional masculine versus traditional feminine, and it could flip. The wife could be one.
Right, it could
and I've seen that. But I do think that a lot of couples are striving for that egalitarian situation because they both are carrying the same weight. Mm-hmm. They both have big careers. They both have big jobs and travel and everything else. And that's where the extended families and
but even if she does have more, he's still the covering.
Right, I understand that from a biblical point of view,
right.
Exactly. And you mentioned societal view. There is, even in Christian homes, there's still much more of a balance. Although, biblically speaking, for folks who believe
or
that,
even
right?
if you go with the Quran or any other religion,
right.
it's all the same.
I understand, and so, but I do think there has to be more of a balance. Because today, most households can't survive on that the income.
Which brings me to a good point.
Covering isn't a financial thing.
Right.
It's more
No.
of a. Okay.
No, James.
But I do want to
is
talk
still
about
covering
money.
for Florida, which is a great example of marriage, by the way.
50 Cent.
Wow,
had
did
a
we just go
song.
from good times to 50?
We sure did. Keep up.
From good times
Dana
to
being
power?
Dana, thank you. We said, 50 Cent said in his song, he said, "Have a baby by me,
Come on, Tasha.
be a millionaire." And I know we got some thousandaires out there. We got some hundredaires out there. 10 heirs? 10.
Did you say tenaires?
I hope we don't have 10 heirs out there.
Just $10.
But I want to talk about alimony, spousal support. How much did you carry your spouse when it comes to, and I'm not saying you personally in your own personal situations, but in general, after a marriage is over?
For me, I wouldn't say are you saying don't speak from our own perspective?
You can, but you don't have to.
I will say the one thing my ex and I did very well was plan, because we were both products of divorce, we really planned out how not to be married more than we actually planned out how to be married. So we really co-parent and divide well. I don't legally have him on a child support type system because we both don't quite agree with that. But he helps take care of our household for his children.
Yeah.
And he supports his children. I don't necessarily look at it for me, but he supports his children, and we find it just fair. We just try to do it as fairly as possible, and it works for us. Now, I wouldn't say, I know there are some people who won't pay, so they need that
Incentive.
And I prefer, because mentally it works for me, is give him certain things to pay, so it doesn't feel like he's giving me money,
Yeah.
and so he
Very
pays.
smart.
So he
Very
pays
smart.
the certain things, and it never has to come through me or come to
So that's
my
very, very smart.
through my
And it
bank
keeps you all
account.
separate.
It keeps us separate. He
Mhm.
pays those things. Those bills come to him. He pays those, and that's the equivalent of my child support. And it's never a then, well, what'd you do with that money? He paid it. So
Right.
it works for us. And I know it may be totally oddly weird, but it works for us.
What you
And
got on this gas bill?
I don't have to fight with him every month,
Right.
thank goodness.
Unless it don't come through, then we got an issue.
Right. So I know everybody's different though.
I agree. It takes balance, and I have to say that my ex-wife and I have a very good balance.
Do you have 2 child supports from wedding 1, wedding 2?
What is 15 minutes? What is 15 minutes child support?
Well, you're dealing
Right,
with,
what's
you're
the
dealing
first-
with well, the kids are 8 years apart.
Right.
The kids are 8 years apart. But I just did get something for Dorothy Brown from 1995.
From the
Right.
first
From
marriage?
the first one, yes, from the first one, literally,
See?
second high school, literally, from 1995, with some
All right.
interest on it. But you do have to balance it out. As David said earlier, you don't want to still linger with certain things.
Right.
One of the worst things, Pastor Frank said this, one of the worst things in the world is to say bye and never leave.
Yes.
A lot of people are still in their emotions, and they still want to hold on or latch on in some kind of a way. You have to let go, and the best way to let go is to be gone and not go through those. You don't have to talk to the person anymore.
Right.
Don't feel like you need them. Don't feel like you want them. If the children are the focus or the child is the focus, make sure their needs are met. Make sure the communication is clear on what you're supposed to do, and be consistent in what you're supposed to do, or as consistent as you can be. And think of balance. Just think of balance. And when the child is younger, you may have to communicate a little bit more, but don't feel like you always have to talk to the other person,
Yes.
because an argument usually is going to flare up over something in some kind of a way.
And sometimes it's just not necessary.
It's just not
Argue
necessary.
or not, it's just not
It's
necessary.
just not necessary.
Right. Well, why are we still talking?
Why are we still talking?
Why are we still talking?
Right.
So anyway,
Just hang up on
I
it.
will say, before we go, because I think we're running out of time, I just want
Oh,
to.
really? It's gone that fast?
Yes.
they're going
Because we started anyway. Somebody out there is listening, and they're really going through this, and they're really wondering, that they are not as far along in our process as we are, and they want to know, what can I do?
Get you some liquor.
And go to
And
church.
then what next?
Some
Prayer.
Ziploc.
And go to church.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I'm joking.
You know,
Don't go to church. No, but is there any?
and I'm joking too.
Are there any parting
Don't
words?
drink your way through.
Are there any parting words that you'd like to say?
Center yourself. Pray. Seek God's face and ask the Lord. And if you're not of the religious nature, at some point you're going to have to reach outside of yourself. You're going to need some help from somewhere. And you're going to need that source in order to get through. And don't make it harder than it needs to be, but you're going to have to find your center. You're going to have to find yourself. You're going to have peace. Above all things, you're going to have peace. And stop moving around. Sit down. You don't have to be in a club. You don't have to, get with every Tom, Dick, and Harry. You don't have to be in every organization. Sit down. And
Or Lisa, Angela,
No, just
Pamela,
sit.
Renee.
Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, and Mike. You see, we have our little music inspiration.
Another
But
show.
just sit down. Just sit down, relax, and find some literature. Go to the library, find a good book on divorce. There are many of them. I happen to have some listed here.
I think it's a process, and I think you will get through it, and I think it does get better. I think you just have to be steadfast, and like you said, I think we've said some good gems. We've been laughing and we've been joking, which has been fun. But I
What you
think-
need to do to get through it. And if you should happen to find someone nice that can get you through your process, then to God be the glory.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining me. It's been a blast. It's been so much fun. And thank you to all the listeners out there, both on intellectualradio.com and also Facebook Live. You can see this rebroadcast in other mediums, which I'll share. Find me on Facebook, Dana Michelle, Instagram, Dana Being Dana. And next week, join us. We're going to be talking about lasting love. We've got 2 fabulous couples, and they're going to talk about how they combined have over 50 years of love in between them. So please join us. It's going to be a blast. If you're interested in sponsorship, please hit me up on Dana Being Dana, Facebook, and Instagram. Until next time, thank you.
Excuse me.
I'm going to take what you said about
Will you hit the
to have someone to go through
Facebook
the process.
Live?
I think about make that a topic.
We live.
I hate this part when I see me run.
Thank you, everybody.
I'm doing it.
Everybody.
Doing it. Say goodbye.
Appreciate you.